Chinese President Xi Jinping is in the U.S. after 6 years. This will be the first face-to-face meeting between U.S. President Joe Biden and Xi Jinping since the Bali Summit of 2022. In the much-anticipated meeting that is expected to last for 3 hours, the two sides are likely to discuss the two wars, U.S.-Taiwan policy, trade, semiconductor row, and the rising military tensions between the two nations in the Indo-Pacific region. This is the first time since 2011 that the United States is hosting the annual Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. Leaders from the 21-member Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Group will gather in San Francisco to talk about how to better spur trade and economic growth across the Pacific region. However, the key highlight of the forum is a Biden-Xi meeting, coming at the backdrop of the various incidents which have stretched the ties between the two countries, starting from the alleged Chinese spy balloon over U.S. to the military activities in the Pacific region. The two leaders have a lot to discuss. When it comes to trade, the first thing experts predict the two leaders will address is the semiconductor race. In the global market, China emerged as the largest market for semiconductors. In October 2022, export restrictions imposed by the U.S., Japan and the Netherlands triggered concerns about the potential misuse of imported equipment. However, Semiconductor Industry Association urged stronger coordination among allies so that a common playing field is maintained across the industry. Meanwhile, people from both China and the U.S. hope that the expected meeting between their leaders aims to ease the recent tensions. This is a humble restaurant on a Beijing street that was a talking point in the U.S.-China ties. In 2011, then Vice President Joe Biden went for lunch at Yaoji Chow Gun. The meal sparked a social media trend which was later dubbed as Biden's noodle diplomacy. Over a decade has passed since then, and while American Chinese food is a hit, their ties slid towards a miss. Speaking on the current state of relations, a passersby near the eatery say the two leaders need to learn to get along for the sake of the world.
他肯定是以捍卫本国利益为主，所以说可能有一些做出的决策让我们无法理解，所以就是希望这次会议可能给双方带来一个沟通的平台。
Hundreds of onlookers lined up along the route of the Chinese and American leaders' motorcade, while some were holding up signs that read "End CCP," the initials of the Chinese Communist Party. Others cited human rights abuses and destruction of their properties in China. Many had Taiwanese and Tibetan flags. Clashes were reported among pro-China and anti-China demonstrators near the Moscone Center. This is the venue where many APEC meetings are being held. Police lined up their vehicles to block the demonstrators from the passing motorcades. Some protesters waved Palestinian flags as they demanded a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. Voice of America's Jessica Stone has sent us this report from San Francisco.
Well, the really big highlight, as you've outlined, is the Xi-Biden summit, which is going to take place about an hour's drive from here in San Francisco at a very well-known and historic estate by the name of Filoli Estate. And what's in particular very interesting about this estate is that part of the property that these two leaders will be able to walk literally is the San Andreas Fault, which is where the tectonic plates from the Pacific meet the tectonic plate from North America. And so in many ways, the tectonic relationship between these two countries and the tectonic implications for the global economy will be on full display. We expect it to be closed to press, but probably some pictures released afterwards. These two leaders meeting a total of 4 hours, as predicted by the White House, which will include a working lunch, a walk around the property, and meetings with their top-level national security officials, after which we should see a press conference with the U.S. media and the foreign media from U.S. President Joe Biden. And we hope to get more details about the outcomes there. But look, Washington is not holding high hopes for major outcomes here, the likes of which we've seen in the past decade of this relationship. They want basically two things. They want Beijing to put pressure on Iran not to have Hezbollah enter the fight in Israel-Hamas war in the Middle East. And they also want there to be a reopening of military-to-military communications.
Let's talk more about this. We are now being joined by our correspondent, Susan Teherani from New York. Susan, good to see you. Is the White House optimistic or even confident about this meeting, highly anticipated meeting between Presidents Xi Jinping and Joe Biden.
Yeah, as Jessica mentioned, the expectations have been set so low. Yesterday, Joe Biden said that one of the things and the most important thing that he hopes to get accomplished in his talks with Xi Jinping is to open lines of communication when it comes to military talks. We do know those were severed after that trip by a former House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, to Taiwan. We do know that prior to their meeting, they have announced that they will reach a deal and announce a deal to crack down on fentanyl, as the United States grapples with the worsening opioid crisis. The precursors, the chemical precursors for fentanyl come from China. A lot of them, they go to Latin America and then they cross the southern border here in the United States, San Francisco, California being a city and a state that's grappling with fentanyl as well. On climate change, hopefully they'll be able to announce some achievements, although China hasn't really been faithful to those agreements in the past. And then ultimately, in terms of nuclear stockpiles, nuclear weapons, and the role of AI, these are things that, we'll see some symbolic announcements of. But then, the big issues, trade, the Taiwan question, and also China's military activities in the South China Sea and the Indo-Pacific are things that, may really not, we won't see a breakthrough in.
All right, I've been talking to our correspondent, Susan Tehrani. Susan, thank you. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.